So a few years ago, I learned about making no-knead bread, and it took me a while to figure out how to adapt it for whole wheat. What I like most about it is how simple it is. It's in keeping with the whole Spartan theme of this channel. It only requires 4 ingredients, and it takes about 5 minutes to make, and it turns out amazing. Here, I'll walk you through the whole process. There's not much to it. So, I ground this flour earlier this morning. It doesn't have to be fresh ground. I just like it that way. You're going to need 6 cups of whole wheat flour. Two teaspoons of salt. Half a teaspoon of yeast. Basically stir it up with a fork. Water is a little bit tricky. You want about 3 1/3 cups. But I'll show you how to tell if it's too much or too little. And it's better to start with too little and add. Three and then 1/3, roughly. Okay. And the goal is to get rid of all the white flour. You want it all to be dark. Still have some down at the bottom. It ends up looking like, just shaggy biscuit dough, actually. And usually there's some flour down at the bottom that wants to stay dry, and that's still have some down there. If you have to, you can add another tablespoon of water. Okay. And that is it. After it's made, you just let it sit at room temperature. I live at 5,000 feet elevation, so it takes about 4 hours for it to rise. If you're down at sea level, it'll probably take 10 or 12 hours. Rising is by far the longest part of this process. The other thing you'll need is something to cook it in. I use a large Dutch oven. The reason for the Dutch oven is because when you put the lid on it, it traps the steam and the moisture in. And what happens with bread while you're cooking it is the outside layer hardens first, and that prevents the bread from expanding. And you don't want that. And so professional bakers have rather expensive ovens that will inject steam into the oven to keep the outside of the bread soft so it can expand. By trapping the moisture in with the Dutch oven, you essentially get the same effect. When you have about an hour to go, you want to turn on the oven and preheat it. Okay, and the way you get the oven ready, you're gonna want to pull out the top rack. Set it to 450, and you give it about an hour to preheat. All right, it's been about 4 hours, and when the dough has risen, it looks about like that. It still does not look like regular bread dough, but that's okay. This isn't regular bread dough. Still doesn't look like regular bread dough. Okay, so what you want to do, throw down some flour so it doesn't stick. Get a slightly wet spatula. Dump it out. You can see a dry spot where we didn't quite get all of the flour off. Okay, so now what we're going to do is fold it in half twice. Ish, you know, we're just trying to get roughly a square shaped loaf going. Okay, so that's about roughly a square. I don't like that. Don't like that pocket. So put that in the middle. Okay, so now we've got roughly a square. We have the oven preheated to 450 degrees. Take our dough, drop it in the pan. Set the timer for 40 minutes. I had a technical video glitch here. However, after 40 minutes, you take it out, crack the lid open, and set it for another 20 minutes. Okay, it's been an hour. At the end of the hour, when it's finally done, Jen, take the bread out. And there it is, finished product. Now, as tempting as it may be, it's important to wait 10 minutes before you cut it. If you try to cut it right now, it hasn't had time to fully form its structure, and you'll end up collapsing the bread. Once you get inside, it'll squish down, it makes it messy. Give it 10 minutes and then cut it. It has now been 10 minutes, perhaps a little longer. So we're going to cut it. And one of the best things about the bread is just the crust. The crust is really good, really strong. Anyway, get some butter, have at her, it's good stuff.